Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao nodded and smiled. Good, good. I hope you're still a man and can keep your word. In front of all the experts from the Four Extremes sect and Empyrean One Pavilion, I hope you can keep your word. If you treat your words as farts, I'll see how you can continue to live in the future. With a flash between his eyebrows, the Divine Realm tablet turned into a golden light and shot out. It passed through all kinds of attacks and instantly arrived above the Four Extremes sect's battleship. It turned into a small mountain and fell down suddenly. Tang Jie gasped. The Divine Realm tablet appeared above the Netherworld warship, blocking the sunlight and making it dim. He cried out in horror, quickly shatter it. The Netherworld battleship's tail was too big to fall, and the great demon's expressions changed slightly. At this moment, Shan Yongzi stood up and expressed his loyalty. Don't panic, eldest young master, I'll handle it. He flew up and condensed a ball of light in his left hand. With a loud shout, he blasted it at the Divine Realm tablet that was pressing down on him. Although his right hand had been cut off by Wing, the cultivation of a 7-star martial venerable was still extremely terrifying. A domain appeared with a punch, and then it shook toward the Divine Realm tablet, as if it would break it. The judge's pupils shrank, and a cold light flickered in his eyes. It was this holy weapon that had crushed the axis of his Taiwei armillary sphere. Although the spiritual qi was not as overbearing as it had been at that time, the infinite gravity had shaken the air and pressed down layer by layer, making the people on the battleship feel great pressure. Yi sighed, this is indeed a saint weapon. This infinite gravity seems to contain the breathing earth. Shan Yongzi won't be able to stop it. Tang Jie was shocked and looked up in horror. If he couldn't block it, this thing would smash down and his warship would be destroyed. Cold sweat burst out of his forehead. He had just boasted that he would not move, but now he was trembling. No wonder Yunxiao had provoked him. It turned out that he had such a trick up his sleeve. What should he do now? If he ran away, wouldn't he be immediately slapped in the face? Where would he put his face? He looked at the demons for help. Richard looked at him with pity and sighed, run. It's better to be slapped in the face than to be killed. I'm going to run anyway, so you can do as you see fit. He was extremely nimble. As soon as he finished speaking, the demons disappeared from the warship and reappeared in the distant sky. Li was still holding Yuan Sun. Boom. When Shan Yongzi's punch finally landed on the tablet, the smug smile on his face turned into shock and horror in an instant. He kept shouting in fear, what's going on? This pressure is overwhelming. The Divine Realm tablet's weight was getting heavier and heavier. His punch had only slightly reduced the speed of falling for a moment, and then it fell rapidly again. It was inevitable that it would crush the warship. Not good, run. Shan Yongzi was the first to cry out in shock. He instantly turned into a beam of light and shot out. Immediately after, many experts on the warship fled. Tang Jie was stunned. At this time, he naturally didn't care about his face and flew out with everyone. Boom. The Divine Realm tablet landed on the Netherworld battleship without any suspense, falling down with it. In the process of falling, the sound of the battleship shattering could be heard, and it landed with a loud crash. Boom. With another earth-shaking sound, a huge pit was smashed into the demon plains, shaking the earth and mountains. Yunxiao's face was a little pale. His mind was connected to the Divine Realm tablet, so he could directly feel that the tablet's condition was getting worse and worse. Under the suppression, it had once again suffered a great loss. With the divine incantation in his hand, the Divine Realm tablet instantly flew back to his glabella. At this time, the people of the Empyrean One Pavilion were completely petrified. It was not until Yunxiao shouted that they reacted. Overjoyed, Qingluo ordered, attack. Maximize your attack. At this moment, the Four Extremes sect and the others were all alone in the sky. They were caught in the storm-like attacks of the Netherworld warship and were exhausted from dealing with them. Yunxiao's mocking voice also came from the sky. Eldest young Master Tang, hurry up and eat the warship. Everyone is watching. You can't have forgotten what you said a few breaths ago, right? Tang Jie's face was so gloomy that water was about to drip out. This was simply a slap to his face, and it was so loud. He shouted with all his strength, kill him. Kill Li Yunxiao. All of you, charge over and kill them. He no longer had any grace. The experts of the Empyrean One Pavilion wore bitter looks on their faces. Under such a powerful attack from all directions, even they, who were martial emperors, had to be careful when dealing with it. None of them dared to rush up and court death. Even though Shan Yangzi was able to handle the situation with ease, he did not dare to rush forward. After all, the other party's experts were all eyeing them covetously, staring at their side without fear. If they rushed forward, wouldn't they become the target of public criticism? Shang was frowning as well. He had thought that it was an overwhelming advantage, but he did not expect the first round to be this pathetic. He shouted, "Talisman." Understood. Fu immediately understood. With a flash of light, the axe appeared in his hand. He carried it on his shoulder and rushed toward the netherworld battleship of Empyrean One Pavilion. Although he was burly, he flew very nimbly, shuttling through all kinds of attacks. The netherworld battleship was a little far from him, and he could not guarantee that it would be destroyed in one strike. After all, his strength was limited, and every time he used a 9th-tier profound armament, he would have to expend a huge amount of energy to ensure that he would hit the target in one strike. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he shouted, "Stop him." Who's going? The experts of Empyrean One Pavilion were shocked and stepped back slightly. As we've agreed, those two demons will be left to your rookie mercenary group to deal with, Qing Luo said. Yifan walked up with a serious expression, "I'll do it." Fengzhu and the others all had ugly expressions. They were all silent, but their eyes were full of hatred. Everyone looked at Yifan curiously, not knowing what he would do. Yunxiao also began to guess, as if he had noticed something. Yifan sighed, he took out a golden pill and held it in his hand. It was as big as a pigeon's egg, but the spirit qi was very dense, it gave off a terrifying aura. As soon as the pill appeared, an extremely powerful aura spread out. Everyone's eyes widened in shock as they felt the terrifying power. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he cried out, "Emperor-level martial intent core?" Yifan smiled bitterly, martial will pill can only form a lower-level existence. Unless an immortal state warrior is involved, how can there be monarch-level existences in this world? This is a pseudo-emperor-level martial will pill, but it's still an honorable grade pill. It's just that a large amount of emperor qi from the 9 heavens was forcefully poured into it. I see. Once again, Yunxiao was sure that Yi Nanshan's cultivation base was one step higher than his previous life. At least, he could not refine a martial will pill of this level. Gulp. Qing Luo, who was beside him, gulped. Not only her, but the rest of the people also had greedy looks on their faces, and their eyes were shining. Yifan looked at everyone's expressions and sneered, "You guys aren't thinking of snatching it, are you? After snatching it away, I'll go deal with this great demon's 9th-tier profound armament myself." Only then did everyone from the Empyrean One Pavilion calm down. The power of a 9th-tier profound artifact could only be resisted by the Emperor Qi of the 9 heavens. Stop all attacks. Yunxiao shouted. Rest and prepare for the second round of attacks. He stared coldly at Fu, who was constantly dodging. Stopping his attack was to give Fu a chance to attack. With his martial arts grandmaster cultivation, after using a 9th-tier profound artifact with all his strength, he would need at least several hours to regulate his breathing before he could use it again. This was also the reason why Fu was constantly getting closer and closer in order to strike with all his might. The attacks that filled the sky immediately stopped, but the commanders and alchemists on the warship could not relax. They quickly changed all kinds of consumed primordial stones and took medicinal pills, waiting for orders at any time. The people of the 4 extremes sect in the distance heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly regulated their breathing. The martial emperors, in particular, all had white faces. As for the martial arts grandmasters, they were basically all annihilated under this round of attacks. They must have used up all their primeval stones. Tang Jia was overjoyed. His eyes were cold as he said, Shang, how about we kill our way over? Shang rolled his eyes at him and did not say a word, which made Tang Jia somewhat inexplicable. Young Master Tang, you're a resourceful man, Li sighed and scolded, look at the defensive barrier of their warship. It's even stronger than before. It's almost at its limit. It proves that their yuan qi has not been exhausted, but that they have gathered their strength and used it all for defense. That's right, they've seen Fu's axe before, said Shang with a serious tone. He wondered how these people were going to stop him. A defensive boundary of this level cannot withstand more than half of the power of a 9th-tier profound armament. Yu's heart was also moved, and he said in a deep voice, Lord Shang, I'm worried. Especially that Li Yunxiao, I always feel that this man is not simple. Shang's brows furrowed as he shouted, You, go forward to receive the talisman. If you encounter any danger, bring him back immediately. Yes. Yu's eyes shot out a ray of light as he flew forward. Shang's 4 guards were all powerful fighters, but after losing their powers for tens of thousands of years, they had fallen to the level of martial arts grandmasters. GE had also died under such circumstances. As long as they had enough resources and a certain amount of time, they would be able to recover their cultivation from tens of thousands of years ago. The death of any one of them would be an incalculable loss. The trauma from the battle with Qing Zhu was still etched deeply in Shang's heart. Fu Fei stopped 100 meters away from the starship and looked at the people on board with a sneer on his face. They didn't seem to be afraid of him at all. Each of them was confident, even sneering. Fu frowned. His intuition told him that something was wrong. He tightened his grip on the battle axe and slowly raised his aura. No matter what the other party's trump card was, he had to give it his all and destroy the warship. Otherwise, if they had too much of an advantage, the outcome would be hard to predict. It was his mission to destroy the battleship. Fu's aura continued to rise, and everyone's eyes were focused on him. Other than the sound of Mr. Yu flying, the entire sky became quiet. Yi Fan's hand tightened, his martial will pill started to activate. This treasure that had been passed down for thousands of years was finally going to be used up in his hands, but all of this was for the sake of finding Noah's ship. It was worth it. Fu opened his mouth wide and let out an earth-shattering roar. The axe in his hand shone with a golden light as he raised it high. The power of a 9 heavens profound artifact was enough to change the color of the sky. Xian Hua Axe, 1000 Transformation / Everyone's vision turned black as if heaven and earth had been destroyed, leaving behind only a single force that transcended space. Yi Fan was so shocked that he didn't know what to do. Under that destructive power, he felt like an ant that could be destroyed at any moment. Suddenly, a power came from his palm. It was the faint light from the martial will pill, and a wave of warmth, which dispersed the fear in his body. I'm the descendant of the peerless martial sovereign Yinantian. I can't back down in the face of any difficulties. Yi Fan gritted his teeth and pushed his aura to the peak. The martial will pill in his hand burst out with a strong light. He roared and threw it towards the power that made him feel fear. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering boom followed, as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. The entire Netherworld battleship was jolted back a distance, as if it was about to shatter. The defensive barrier flickered and became extremely dim. The sky was filled with an intense light, and one could not see anything. Shang's expression turned ugly as he said in shock, Emperor-level martial intent core condensation? How could such a thing exist? No, it's not a monarch ranked one. After Fu's body was struck, all of his yuan qi was sucked dry. His entire body collapsed, and he was about to be swept up by the aftermath of the explosion. Yu's pupils contracted as he let out a cry of shock. He twisted the space in front of him with his spirit and instantly moved the talisman to his side, using his body to protect it. The impact swallowed Mr. Yu. Everyone from the 4 extreme sect also had their mouths wide open. They were so shocked that their mouths could fit into their shoes. Shan Yangza broke out in a cold sweat. Was this the power a martial arts grandmaster should have? Looking at his empty left shoulder, it was no wonder that he had been chopped off. The people of the Heavenly One pavilion on the warship were all terrified. If Yi Fan didn't block that attack, they would have been wiped out. Lady Cheng Luo, it's your turn. Yun Xiao suddenly shouted. Don't let you escape. The Yuzhang talisman flew backward with great difficulty from the terrifying energy. Cheng Luo's eyes flashed with a cold glint as she snorted, he's just a martial emperor. Who's going to deal with him? An old woman behind her stepped forward and said, Lady Cheng Luo, leave it to me. That rain's cultivation level seems to be about the same as mine, and he's also bringing someone with him. He'll definitely be restrained if he fights. I'm 90% confident that I can take him down. That's right, Granny Shimin, Cheng Luo said with a happy smile. You must win and show off the might of Empyrean One Pavilion. Yes. Granny Shimin's face was solemn, as if she was determined to complete the mission with her life. He saluted Cheng Luo, shouted, and rushed out of the battleship, chasing after the rain. Yun Xiao sighed inwardly and turned his head away, unable to look at her. At this moment, he suddenly felt that he had become a little cruel. He couldn't bear to say, Lady Cheng Luo, it's better if you and the other martial supremes attack together. It might be more secure. The three martial venerables, 2 women and 1 man, all had white hair, and they seemed to be extremely unhappy as they snorted coldly. Cheng Luo's eyes were also cold as she stared at Granny Shimin's back. She said coldly, Li Yunxiao, if we have to deal with a mere martial emperor, who will deal with the experts of the 4 extremes sect next? Demon, stay here. Granny Shimin's movements were a little shaky, but they were extremely fast. In 8 steps chasing Cicada, she caught up with you and slapped his back. Big pineapple palm. She bent her body in the air and curled her feet in front of her body. Her whole body turned into a round ball, protecting all the vital parts of her body and reducing the area of attack. At the same time, she clenched her left hand into a fist and placed it in front of her chest. She planned to attack and defend after the attack, and she could advance and retreat freely. It was a very experienced attack technique. Yue Wei turned her head and coldly spat out a word, die. He waved his right arm and it started to beat like a heart. With every beat, it expanded to the size of an iron bucket, and he threw it at Granny Shimin's palm. Bang! The fist force exploded, and Granny Shimin's big pineapple palm was instantly pierced through. Before she could react in shock, her own defensive body was also shattered. Her physical body exploded in the air, and not even her bones were left. Cheng Luo and the others' eyes popped out as if they were in a dream. They rubbed their eyes with all their might, thinking that they must have seen wrong or were hallucinating. Yun Xiao's eyes were also filled with horror. There was absolutely no primordial qi in the punch just now. The strength of the fist force alone was enough to instantly blow up an 8 stars martial emperor. Even his soul battle technique, Dragon Breaking Fist, could not achieve such a strength. What was going on? It hadn't been long since they last met, and he was actually so powerful. He had a faint feeling that something was wrong. This rain was much stronger than he had expected. Fortunately, he was not the one dealing with it. He turned his head and said, Lady Cheng Luo, the rain is about to escape. Cheng Luo shuddered and recovered from her shock. She shouted, 3 martial supremes, who will go? Blowing up an 8 stars martial emperor with one punch was something that any martial supreme could do. Therefore, although the scene was shocking, she didn't raise her guard. After all, it was common for people of the same rank to have huge differences in strength. Lady Cheng Luo, Yun Xiao sighed. If we lose another martial honor, we'll really lose. Cheng Luo trembled violently as a look of astonishment shot out from her eyes. She glanced at the rain in the distance and shouted, 3 martial supremes, attack together. The 3 martial venerables frowned. Although they were not happy, they did not dare to disobey. They turned into 3 rays of light and shot towards the rain. The power of their domains spread out and stacked together, pressing down with a bang. Shan Yang's pupils contracted as he pleaded, "Young master, those three old men aren't weak. I'm afraid Mr. Yu is in danger. Why don't you let me get rid of them?" Tang Jie had been giving him a cold look during the Divine Realm tablet incident, which made Dan Yangze very uneasy. He had been looking for an opportunity to show his value and loyalty, even though he had lost an arm and his strength had been greatly reduced. However, he was a 7 stars martial supreme. Dealing with 3 stars existences was still a piece of cake. Tang Jia looked at Shang, asking for his opinion. Shan Yang's heart skipped a beat. Even though he did not know who Shang and the others were, it seemed like they were highly regarded by the Tang tribulation. It seemed like he had to build a good relationship with them in the future. Chu Weiwei shook her head and smiled, "It's okay." Since he had said so, Tang Jia naturally did not worry. He said gently to Shan Yangze, "Mr. Dan, have a good rest. You'll be of great use later." Shan Yangze's heart trembled as he nodded in agreement. The rain protection talisman was immediately trapped by the 3 domains. All of his yuan qi was bound and he couldn't use any power. The old revered martial artist shouted, "Stop, demon. Surrender. Follow me back and ask for forgiveness." Fu did not have any strength left. His face was pale as he said, You go first. Don't worry about me." "Don't worry, they're just 3 minions," Yu said calmly. "Woof. You're looking for death." The old man roared in anger. His 5 fingers were like mountains, and he pressed his palm over. A huge handprint condensed in the air, and the power to topple mountains and overturn the seas rolled down. "Humph." Yu snorted and a cold light flashed in her hand. The tail-light sword stabbed towards the palm print. The cold light turned into a sharp blade and instantly pierced through the giant palm, slashing towards the old man. Although he was not able to use a 9th-tier profound armament to the greatest extent like the other great demons, he had still cultivated to the state of mind and spirit as one. He could mobilize a small part of his power, which was enough to kill a martial supreme. Moreover, his strength had reached the peak of an 8 stars martial emperor. Even if he were to use the tail-light sword, he would still have sufficient vital qi to support it for a long time. "Be careful." The other 2 old women shouted as their expressions changed drastically. The old man was also shocked. He felt the sharp qi on the sword light, which seemed to be invincible. He was so scared that he quickly retracted his palm and retreated in the air. The sword light shot into the sky, brushing past his body, and cut his brocade robe. He was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. This demon can't be underestimated. "Attack together." An old woman shouted and finally stopped looking down on him. She took out a sword and stabbed him. The other old woman also showed her power repeatedly, and instantly threw out hundreds of punches. The sky was densely covered with fist shadows, and the rain was completely surrounded. She threw punches one after another. The space seemed to be crumpled by the chaotic punches, and Rain's figure seemed to be in a trance. The sword-wielding old woman's eyes flashed. A slash swept over and directly cut the blurry figure apart. Rain's figure immediately disappeared. "Where is he?" The 2 of them were shocked and looked around in horror. To their horror, they found that not only the rain had disappeared, but the old man, Emperor in one pavilion, for extreme sect, and the 5-element spirit-devouring rat in the distance had also disappeared. Only the 2 of them were left in the world. An illusion. The 2 of them instantly reacted, but what kind of mental energy was needed to be able to make a martial supreme realm expert fall for an illusion without him knowing? In the sky above the demon plains, the old man who dodged the sword looked in front of him in shock. His 2 companions, who were showing off their might just now, stood there in a daze, as if they had been immobilized by a spell. They could only watch as Yu Yi's sword slashed over. "Stop!" The old man roared with all his might. Copper rings kept surging out of his right hand, connecting in the air and sweeping across the distance. He also knew that something had happened, and his heart felt heavy. Qing Luo, who was on the battleship, couldn't sit still any longer. Without even saying a word, she turned into a beam of light and rushed out. She cast the silk in her hand, covering the sky and the earth, blocking out the sunlight. On the other hand, Yunxiao's eyes were filled with deep fear. Even he could not see through the rain's illusion, which meant that it had obviously improved. It was not just the strength of the physical body that was improved, but an overall improvement in strength.